welcome. You're watching NewsX. I'm Megha Sharma. I'm here at the Danish Embassy in New Delhi. Joining me is the very special guest. We have with us the Danish Ambassador to India, His Excellency Rasmus Abildgaard Kristensen. Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining me on the telecast. Thank you very much for being on NewsX. And my first question, of course, you've been here for a few months now in official capacity. How has been the entire experience with the post that you've held in India thus far?
It's been an absolutely wonderful experience. I have traveled to India before, both for business and pleasure, but this is the first time I can call it my home. And I'm very happy to be here, both here in Delhi, but also have the opportunity to explore other parts of this great and very big country.
Right. I'm going to start off with, of course, India and Denmark ties that span a period of since 1949 is when the official relationship between India and Denmark started. And very recently in 2020, there was this elevation of our strategic ties to green strategic partnership. What are the milestones that India and Denmark have achieved since then? And what does the future look like?
I think we have progressed enormously in recent years. As you mentioned, Denmark and India established a green strategic partnership back in 2020. And as a result of that, we have now established cooperation in a number of areas, I think, to the benefit of both countries. It's called a green strategic partnership for good reasons, because most of what we do has some sort of sustainability angle. So Denmark has long experiences when it comes to renewable energy, and India is already a front runner in that area as well. So we compare notes and help each other. The same goes within water, within various high-tech areas, healthcare, food and agriculture.
Right.
And all these cooperation areas are quite successful and progressing steadily. So the next level here, I think, would be to get even more scale and impact out of these partnerships, and then we will also start cooperating on some new areas, and perhaps even some areas that requires even more trust between the two countries. And I think that trust has now been built over the past 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I was looking at your social media posts, and I think a couple of days ago you also ended up meeting the Tamil Nadu members of parliament, and this is if you could focus on all these plants that have been set up in Tamil Nadu in India, and particularly about Vestas, which is about renewable energy, and talking about Musk, logistics and shipping. Do you think there is scope for expanding this partnership by way of setting up more industries from Denmark, bringing more investment, and maybe touching upon not just Tamil Nadu but other parts of the country as well?
Absolutely, and I sense a great interest from the Danish private sector in coming to India, investing in India, establish manufacturing here, capability centers, and also, of course, just looking at the Indian market as a very attractive destination. So we see quite a bit of momentum there. There's currently more than 220 Danish companies with a presence in India, and Danish companies already employ way more than 100,000 people here in India. Geographically, it's spread out over the country. A lot of Danish companies are present in the south, in Tamil Nadu, in Karnataka, in Maharashtra, but also in Gujarat, around Delhi, and other places. So in that sense, I think we have a very strong presence here, and is within a broad range of sectors as well. And we will only see that further expanding in the years to come. So my impression from talking to the companies, but also, and perhaps more importantly, talking to the boardrooms and the executives back in Denmark, is that India is very much top of the agenda at the moment in the discussions on where to expand globally.
I do want to also touch upon, when you talk about Denmark, it has to be about the India-Nordic summit. Of course, unfortunately, the last summit could not take place because of the Pahalgam attack and all that happened in India after that. But where is that partnership moving ahead?
I think it makes a lot of sense for India to sometimes also look at the Nordics as a region, because the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland and Iceland, are in some respects quite similar. We are, very developed economies with a strong focus on education, high tech, a lot of companies working on sustainability, healthcare, digital services. So it's a good match in many ways for India. And we, each of us may seem like small countries, but together, the 5 Nordic countries, we are the world's 11th biggest economy. So therefore, comparable to say South Korea. So in that sense, it makes a lot of sense, I think, for India also to look at the 5 countries together and see, what we can do. Because again, we are quite similar, and we have a lot of things to offer India, and I think India has a lot to offer us.
Indian External Affairs Minister was in Denmark just a couple of months ago. He met the Prime Minister of Denmark, met Frederiksen. And also there was an Indian delegation that had also traveled to Denmark. This was primarily to send out the message of India's fight against terrorism right after India's military strikes that were a reaction to the Pahalgam attack with the terrorists that had infiltrated into India. How can India and Denmark work together to fight the scourge of corruption, global corruption, talking about global financial terror, global terrorism?
I think first and foremost, I just want to emphasize that Denmark, both our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister, were among the very first foreign leaders to express their condemnation for the terrorist attack in Pahalgam, and also expressing, of course, sympathy and support to the Indian government. Denmark has had a very long-standing position on fighting terrorism. We have ourselves been the victim of terrorism. Back in 2015, there was a terror attack in Copenhagen. Our embassy in Islamabad years before that were bombed by there was a suicide bomber that also killed, for the first time historically, Danish diplomatic staff. So we've had our own, let's say, bad experiences with terrorism, and it's been a long-standing priority for us to fight it. And of course, we would also do that together with India. And as you would imagine, there is no one solution to that problem. It pertains to so many areas. You need to look at how terrorism is financed, how it is, what are some of the socioeconomic reasons for why it spreads. What is the police actions you need to take to prevent it, detect it, stop it. It pertains to so many areas, and I think in that sense there are a great scope for also very concrete cooperation between our countries. And then, of course, at the highest level, at the UN, Denmark is currently a non-permanent member of the Security Council. This is also one of our priorities, and I think India did feel the Danish support after the attack also in that matter.
Okay, moving on to a very important landmark when it comes to the European Union Council. Denmark has been at the center stage by way of taking the rotating presidency of the European Union Council. What are the key agendas for the government?
We have a very simple slogan for our presidency, which is a strong Europe in a changing world. And I think that nicely encapsulates our priorities, which is actually 3 things. The first thing is security. Europe is in a challenged environment at the moment when it comes to our security. We've had a war of aggression just with one of our neighbors, and we need to improve our ability to stand on our own feet, also defend ourselves. So security defense is one priority. Another relates to competitiveness. I think Europe has clearly a need to improve its competitiveness, and as part of that also to diversify, let's say, our economic partners in the rest of the world, to make sure we are not overly reliant on 1 or 2 major countries to trade with, but that we also look at other opportunities. And we can come back to it, but that's of course where India could play a very important role for Europe, and I think India would have a similar view of the importance of dealing more with the EU when it comes to economic affairs. Finally, with those 2 very important priorities on defense, security and competitiveness, very important for Denmark that we don't forget the climate change and the energy transition that we need to carry out still in Europe. So those 3 are our priorities: security, competitiveness, and green.
Could you also shed light into what the official position of the government is vis-a-vis migration, which also is one of the key agendas, if not the key agenda, for the presidency that Denmark now holds of the European Union? Also, we see quite the shake-up that has happened across the globe, from United States of America to Canada to Mexico, about fighting migration, about putting up stringent laws against migration. What is the current sentiment of the people in Denmark regarding this as well?
I think here it's important to underline that what we're talking about here is irregular migration. To basically stem the flow of irregular migrants coming to Europe. Europe, of course, just like India or any other country, has a right to decide who comes to our country or our territory and how many. And that needs to be controlled. It's not something that can happen in an uncontrolled way. And I think that's what we're talking about here when it comes to migration. And that, therefore, it's kind of a subset under the priority of security, because if you have an uncontrolled flow of migration from all over the world into the European Union, it causes problems of cohesion, of eventually of security. So that's important for us. But that being said, we have no problem when it comes to controlled migration. And to give you an example, if you look at my country, Denmark, the largest or the fastest growing migrant community there are people from India. And they are treasured, valued citizens. In fact, the average Indian person in Denmark earns more than the average Dane. And that tells you also a little bit about the kind of jobs they perform and the quality of the people coming. And they are, of course, all they applied for a work visa, and they've been given that because we want them to come. But that's not the same as we cannot control who's coming. So it's really two different issues. So the uncontrolled migration is a priority for us and many other European countries.
Talking about, again, the other aspect of the key agenda for the government of Denmark is defense spending. And there has been huge funds that have been allocated for the NATO defense package for Ukraine. How do you view, in the current scheme of things, particularly with India buying the Russian oil, and there has been quite the backlash that it has faced from United States of America. How does Denmark view the situation vis-a-vis its support to Ukraine in the war that has been going on since 2022?
I think it's important to understand that when it comes to the war in Ukraine, this is seen from a European perspective. This is a clear security threat for us. We have an independent, sovereign country, Ukraine, recognized by everybody, including India, United States, many others, that is invaded by its neighbor, Russia. So that's a war of aggression. And of course, the sentiment in Europe is, okay, so who will be next? If you can violate international law, rules of sovereignty like that, then who will be next? So the consequence of that is, of course, that in Europe, we do understand now that we need to increase our defense spending to deter any further aggression. And as part of that, of course, we will keep supporting Ukraine in this war against an illegal invader. So that will continue. And of course, as part of that, it's important for us also to see what we can do to deprive Russia of the means to keep, continuing this war that is killing people every single day. So that's
okay. Are you supportive of the very strong stance that has been taken by the US president on imposing 25% additional tariffs on India for the reason that he says is India's import of Russian oil into its territory?
I cannot speak for the US, but I can explain the European position here. And I think maybe things have been confused a little bit in terms of that, because the European position here is very clear. And the European sanction regime is very clear. The sanctions are first and foremost sanctions on ourselves. So what the European Commission and the EU member states have decided is to sanction our own companies in terms of what they can and cannot do when it comes to Russia. And the decision that was made with the most recent sanction package is that we do not want in Europe to import Russian oil through third countries. So basically, if India chooses to import oil from Russia, refine it, and then sell it back to Europe, we don't want to buy it. So that's all we say. Whether India wants to import Russian oil for its own consumption and own needs, actually we don't have any particular opinion on. Of course, you could. In the best of all worlds, we would rather they didn't, because it does bring funding back to Russia. But technically we don't have an opinion on it. But we have a strong opinion about avoiding getting Russian oil into our territory. So that's what we're talking about. But it's a sanction on ourselves. So that is the European position, and I think that's important to emphasize.
Talking about tariffs, I would like to understand from you, how does Denmark, as part of the European Union, tackle these tariffs that have been imposed? There was a deal that was signed between Ursula von der Leyen, and there had been a lot of criticism that had come in from a few European Union nations talking about how it was an unfair deal.
I think it's important there also to point out that Denmark and the European Union have traditionally always been proponents of free trade. We think it's to the benefit of us and our commercial partners that we have as much free trade as possible. So therefore, it is regrettable that we are now in a situation where protectionism and tariffs are on the rise. So in the best of all world, we would like to have avoided the situation that we're in now, as you point out, an agreement was made between the United States and the European Union on the future of our economic relationship, including with an increase in tariffs. I think that's something we would rather not have seen, but that's where we are. I think at the end of the day, what is the most important for us in Europe is that we now get some sort of stability and predictability in some of our key economic relationships. But with that in mind, with these constant changes, with all this chaos and instability in the economic system, I think from a European perspective, we are very eager to cultivate economic relations with countries that share that view, that we need stability. And that's where I think why both India and the European Union are now so eager to conclude an FTA before the end of the year. And for the first time, we've negotiated this for 17 years, but for the first time I sense a real urgency on both sides, a real willingness to compromise. So I remain quite optimistic that we will be able to conclude that deal during our presidency, so before the end of the year.
That's very interesting. And if you could shed more light, you said it's been years since this free trade agreement has been languishing. Again, do you think the American tariff policy across the globe on all these countries, including European Union, India, countries in Southeast Asia and others, is bringing nations together and isolating them further away from the United States of America?
Again, U.S. policy I cannot, of course, comment on, but I can safely say that I think there is a new degree of urgency in Brussels, in Delhi, I think, to get more stability into some of the key economic relationship. And I hope India will see that the European Union, sometimes we're a bit slow, but at least we are a stable and predictable partner. A deal is a deal, and it should also be a very attractive partner for India. It's very complementary in terms of our economic value propositions. The EU is a very big market for Indian exports. India is a very interesting investment destination for European companies. So we have so much to offer each other, and maybe because there were so many other things going on in the past, we didn't have this kind of urgency, but it is there now. And I think if we can conclude a deal before the end of the year, it would tremendously benefit both India and the European Union.
I do also want to touch upon this Gaza conflict that has been going on for far too long now. There have been countries like France, Germany, United Kingdom, they have come out and said that we will recognize the territory of Palestine. We are looking forward and support the two-state solution. There have been a handful of nations, including India, that have continuously abstained from the UNSC resolutions that have been tabled at the UNGA, which advocates an immediate cessation of Israeli onslaught on Gaza. What is Denmark's stance on it? What is the European Union stance on this?
Well, I think the Danish position is relatively clear. We have, always supported a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine problem. So no change there. But first and foremost, the challenge we have at hand at the moment is a humanitarian disaster in Gaza, and we have become quite vocal and critical also of Israel's actions in that regard. Of course, we have supported various humanitarian initiatives already here in July, I think we gave a new huge package to the UN system in terms of providing assistance in Gaza, but that's, as you know, very difficult. So we need to put more pressure on Israel. We fully share that view. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Rasmus, for joining me on the telecast, sharing your views. They have been very insightful and very heartening to know that there is a renewed push from India, but also from the European Union, particularly about further forging our trade relations, economic relations. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.